how can you generate free green energy from your roof? Well, today we're going to show you how we're here at this beautiful property in the countryside. It's a blustery day, but we're going to be fitting solar panels. So make sure you like and subscribe and we'll show you how it's done. So we're back here at this house. We did a couple of videos here before preparing for the install, fitting a car charger, doing all the data cabling for the installation, and preparing the distribution board. Make sure you check the cards up here or the links in the description below to watch those preparatory videos. But today is the bigger day. We've got the scaffolding going up, the roofers are arriving to help us to get the panels on the roof. All of the major materials arriving, the panels, battery, inverter, all the rails and mounting equipment. It's all happening today. So I've got here early, I've already taken delivery of some stuff, and we're just going to be in the thick of it all day and let you guys follow us for the ride. What we've got here is the rails. So these go on the roof to mount the panels onto. So the roof hook will screw into the joist, that will go over it, then the rail will go on there, and that is just to maintain the kind of seal of the roof, make sure no rain goes in there and everything, and the tiles get cut around that. The rail gets mounted on there, and then the panels get mounted onto the rail. So it's a little bit like a jigsaw really, and you've got these little bits the foam goes under here to protect the roof, to stop it getting cracked if these go down on the tiles. All the bits and pieces seem to be here, so that's a good start. Now we're just waiting for the panels, battery and inverter. I made these over the weekend to try and make my life a little bit more organised, and I'm loving it so far. So these are little organisers that I've made using Milwaukee pack out. So I've got one for my ferrule crimping. So I've got my crimping tool there, all the different size ferrules. But then they're stackable, so I've made a few. So you can just stack them like that. I've made this one for data. So I've got my RJ45 crimping tool, some glass heads or crimps, connectors and shrouds, cable ties and cable tie bases. In here I've got MC4 connectors and the tools that I need. Definitely be using them on this job. And then in here I've got all my D-line clips, a couple of different sizes for the EV and a size for the trunking NT2 with the screws, the drill bits and the marksman. So it's like little kits basically for specific jobs. So if you've got a specific job to do, rather than grabbing all the little different bits from the van, you just grab one pack out, you've got everything you need for that job in one neatly organised space, and then you can stack them like this. Boom, and then carry them all together. Love it. So this is our Solar Edge inverter. We've actually got two inverters to fit on this job. This is the preliminary inverter because we've not got G99 approval yet. So we've got a 3.68 kilowatt inverter to start with. And then once the G99 comes through, we're going to swap it out to a 5 kilowatt inverter. Now it's only a 3.6 kilowatt system here anyway, so actually this inverter is fine for the solar, but what we want a larger inverter for is for the battery, so that they can discharge 5 kilowatts at any given time from the battery if needed to cover their nighttime usage. So it's not super urgent because realistically at this time of year they're not going to be having that much excess solar to charge the battery up anyway, but the 5 kilowatt inverter will be good in the summer when they're storing loads of excess energy, to be able to discharge that at 5 kilowatts during the evening if they've got any spikes in their usage will really help them to make the most out of the battery storage system. And the good thing about these inverters is they're the same size, whether it's a 5 kilowatt or a 3.6 kilowatt, they're exactly the same size. So we can mount this up and then we'll unhook this one and we'll hook the new one in once we've got the G99 approval. And this will be our kind of go-to for smaller systems when we need to do the same. We've got a spare 3.6 that we can use to just get the customer going, get the job over the line, and then we can swap it out with a larger inverter later on if needed. So for those of you who haven't watched the original earlier video, we installed all of this in the previous video. Consumer unit, data points, network switch, Solar Edge mod bus with a switches connection unit, AC isolator. The DC isolator is not in yet, but we're going to install that today. And we've got a generation meter to put in here now, so that will go next to the AC isolator, and then the inverter is going to go up here, so we can mount that up already, get that prepped, get this trunking drilled ready for the DC cabling. And then we've got to run our DC cabling from the solar panels on the roof down into this inverter, which we're probably going to do with an armoured cable once the scaffolding's up, and just clip that on the outside of the building. So it's all coming together now, and it's nice to have this perfectly laid out space where we can neatly fit everything. That's really important. If you're looking to get battery and solar put in, you do need a kind of a spare wall, ideally inside. It can be outside, but obviously it looks better if it's inside and it's more protected from the weather. Just having a lovely, couple of meters by couple of meters wall to fit everything on is ideal from an installer point of view. So while I pause for a little coffee, it's time to talk to you about today's video sponsor, which is WAGO. More about that later. The power of the human brain is impressive. Maybe I'm just a bit autistic. Let me know in the comments if you can remember very long phone numbers and registration plates and all sorts of random numbers and figures.
You are his third delivery, mate, so I'm going to guess he'll be with you by around 10:30.
Perfect.
11ish.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
All right, pal.
Cheers,
mate.
Bye. Great, 10:30, 11ish. That is perfect because the roof is going to be arriving around then as well. So it means that we're sort of on track for everything to be here and in place in good time. The brain of a solar power system. This is what we call the inverter. So I'm just going to go back to basics here. What this does is it converts the DC power into AC power that then can be used to run your house. Our normal house power systems run on 230 volts AC. The solar panels produce hundreds of volts DC. They're connected in series, so every time you add a panel, it increases the voltage by the voltage of the panel. So it can be up to like 400 or 500 volts DC. That power comes into here, and this thing converts it into AC that's usable power that you can then use in your house. I've got this little chip that I'm going to put in here. It's called an energy net. What it does is it enables the Solar Edge inverter to wirelessly communicate with the battery, an important part of the system. We could run an RS485 cable from here to the battery as well. That's another way of doing it. And then this could be used for something else like a hot water energy diverter or Solar Edge EV charging point or something like that. But in this case, we don't have either of those. So we're going to use this to communicate with the battery. So this energy net just plugs in to here, and we just want to make sure the pins all line up properly so that we don't have any issues. And that should just push it in. So this is an antenna, and this is an antenna. We've got two antennas for this system. One is for the Wi-Fi and one is for the energy net, which works over Zigbee. So we're going to put one antenna on each side of the device, run the cables through, and then connect them into the relevant ports on the circuit board. So these look identical, but one of them says eNet on it and the other one says Wi-Fi Zigbee. So what we'll do is the Wi-Fi Zigbee one goes onto the main board here, and then the energy net one goes onto the energy net card. And we'll keep the slack inside the inverter rather than outside, just to sort of neatness sake really. Got a couple of cable ties that come with it so we can neatly cable tie everything together. This is the energy net one, and it's slightly taller, the stand on that one versus that one, so this one's going to be slightly higher. Not sure why that is, but it is what it is. Now, the reason I put these on before mounting it is because we want to make sure we've got enough space up above and below for everything, and I'm slightly worried that's going to be a bit tight. That'll just go, and then we've just about got space for those DC branch connectors. Now the other option is we could wall mount these antennas and put them slightly lower, and I am actually tempted to do that just so that I can put the inverter slightly higher. So I will actually detach these and screw them to the wall. So that's all mounted up now. We've just got to put a couple of retaining screws in there just to hold that in place. Antennas are up. Now what we're going to do is mount our DC isolator, and then I'm going to drill through to the outside and prep the cable route to get the DC cabling down to here, so that when the scaffolding goes up, we just need to clip the armoured cable up, run it into the loft, and we're good to go. So that's our DC isolator mounted. I'm going to mount the meter now, just to let you know what this is for. So this is what we call a generation meter. So it's required to monitor how much energy the solar system is actually generating. Very important. So that will go here, and then that can be checked by the customer or the energy supplier, because they can actually get a feed-in tariff where they're paid for the energy that they generate and put back into the grid. So this just enables them to check that, and it has to be a mid-rated meter, so it's certified, so that we know that it's accurate and registering the correct readings. And basically what we've done is we've cut a slot in here, so the cables will come out of this AC isolator through the meter, and then from the meter up into here, and then this cover can just neatly slide over and hide and protect all the cables. So this side of the scaffold's up, we are on roof level now, fantastic. So we're just planning and marking everything out, and it takes a little bit of planning to get it looking spot on, because we want it to look aesthetically right in the middle of the roof. Planning with the spacing around the panels above and below, either side, enough space to put the solar skirt bird protection on as well. So we're just going through things now with the roofer and marking everything up. So I'm sorry for all the wind noise on the video, but there's basically a storm happening. It is not the perfect conditions for this, unfortunately, but you can't pick the weather, you know. We booked the deliveries of all the materials today, but the scaffolding, what can you do? You've just got to crack on, you know. And at the moment, it's not torrential, at least, so it's bearable with the right clothing. Hopefully the Tina Turners are doing their job, but if you do hear a lot of wind, then sorry about that. Logistics are always tricky. So the panels and the battery and everything was supposed to be arriving today. In fact, I was expecting it by now. I just phoned the logistics company. They said that the lorry has got an overheat light come on the engine, and they've had to take it to a workshop. So it's 4.2 miles from here, but the tracker is moving because it's on the back of a low loader being taken to workshop, which means we're not going to get our materials today unless they manage to get it fixed and sent over to here before the end of the day. Otherwise, they said they'll get it here tomorrow morning. So that's a bit of a blow, but at least we've got a bit of wiggle room, because it's going to be probably today and all day tomorrow to get these rails on anyway, so we should be all right, but it's just a bit frustrating. So those two, yeah. These three, and those two, yeah. My hands are too soft for this kind of work.
I don't know. Yeah, it's not.
With my tongue out, you can tell I'm concentrating and all like that. So that'll go.
It goes in there.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's perfect. So we're using these Genius flashings, and they just maintain the seal of the roof to make sure it's nice and waterproof. So that will go on there, but then we've just got to do some cuts to make sure that the tiles fit neatly around it. So our Genius roofer here, Stuart, is cutting them, and I'm just gonna basically try and figure out where he needs to cut them. Nice. There we go. Have a lunch, yeah. Sounds like a good plan. It's just absolutely typical that on a day when you're doing totally outside work, it has to chuck it down with rain, doesn't it? And the trouble is with this kind of weather, you can't really plan. You know, you've got to do the job on the day that everything is lined up for. Fortunately, scaffolding's up now, so that means, you know, scaffolders can get out of here without getting too wet. They just finished just as it started chucking down. Lovely customers made us a nice cup of coffee, and we're sheltering here in this little lean-to until hopefully the rain passes and we can crack on a little bit more. So as you know, I like working in small cupboards, but today is not my day because, you know, that lovely bootlace ferrule Milwaukee pack out set that I made? Well, I've already managed to tip it over and the ferrules went everywhere because I was shoving everything in here quickly because it was chucking it down with rain. I didn't want my tools to get wet, and guess what? I've just tipped all the ferrules all over the floor. So I've got that to look forward to, trying to clean those up. The absolute soul-destroying evidence of my own incompetence. What I did is I picked it up like that, and I thought that the lid would be stopping in that position, but it didn't, and it just clicked, and it went everywhere. My whole idea of becoming organised has been an epic fail, unfortunately. Oh, that was close. It's just so sad. It was so beautiful. I should do the hoover sock trick. If you watch eFix, they did come up with a really good little trick that I've not had a chance to try yet of how to pick these all up. It involves a hoover and a sock. As I don't have any spare socks lying around on the van, I'm going to try and use an Artisan beanie as an alternative. Don't know if it's going to work because the beanie is probably a bit too thick. Or I just take my sock off and dry it with my sock. Got very thick socks on today. So I think you're supposed to kind of shove the sock in like that. Quite a good little tip so far. I think the sock is definitely too thick, but in principle it does seem to work. The verdict here is it does work. I probably should have used a slightly less thick sock, but it does work and it probably saves you a bit of time. However, my advice is don't spill them in the first place. So I've got my generation meter, which I'm wiring up here, and this is where our sponsor today comes in handy, WAGO, because I've had to join the earth through the meter here. Now I could have joined it in the back of the isolator, but then it's not easy to access and I don't really trust those screw connections. The WAGO through connectors, which are the 221 2411s, these ones, they are rated at up to 32 amps and they're rated for 4mm squared cable, which is perfect for us because we're using 4mm flex here and it's on a 32 amp circuit breaker. So this enables us to get a really nice strong through connection here, and WAGO are doing this Win with WAGO campaign where you can win an electric van. The entries are closing quite soon. When you get some WAGOs, make sure you peel this sticker off and then scan the QR code, enter the entry code on there, and you could be in with a chance to win an electric van. And let's face it, as Sparkies, we probably use quite a lot of these. So get yourself some WAGOs from the wholesaler, peel and enter, and you could be in with a chance to win. And thanks to WAGO for sponsoring today's video. Oh man, that is why I can't wait to get our new Hilti tools, because that is a classic thing that Hilti will stop. When it gets jammed, it doesn't carry on, it automatically cuts out. This is a classic problem. Whew. Now the fun part, getting it up into the loft. Straight up the wall, drill through the soffit. Hopefully we can fish into the loft. Slightly annoying, they don't have clips for these that you can clip on to your thing, you know. These are one of my favourite tools in the world. Get me out of so many tricky situations. By the way, I guess this should be tool of the day. Hopefully if it works. If it doesn't work, we'll find another tool of the day. Probably my rain jacket. So it's basically just a case of shoving them up there and seeing if we can see them in the loft. It's not really rocket science, but we'll see if we hit any snags. Hey, oh, that looks very hopeful. Very hopeful indeed. Mr. Cameraman, can you pass me a couple more rods, please? Red ones. Yeah, prefer to use all the same colour. This is amazing that I can actually do it from this height. I was thinking I'd have to go up the scaffolding and do it, but there we go. So I think we're probably into the loft now at least. What I'm going to do now, go into the loft, see if I can grab the other end. What I will do is put the cable sock on this end with the cable on, and then if we can grab the other end, we can just pull it straight up. You can get different sizes of these. The standard two that come with it are fairly small because they're mainly for domestic sort of situations. Feels like I can get it over. No, it's not going to happen. If I just tape it on, I can see the rod. Fantastic. As you know, as electricians, we get to see a lot of lofts, and this is one of the nicer lofts that I've spent time in my career. But I am putting my boots back on up here because it just feels a bit safer. I don't really want insulation all over my socks. They're already a bit dusty from earlier. But in the distance here, you can see my rod. Hopefully, we can grab onto it, pull it up, and the cable will come with it. Voila. That is absolutely miraculous. Oh, rubbish. Oh, right at the last minute, that was so close. That's me being a numpty for not having tightened it on properly. But at least I know we're exactly in the right place that we need to be. So we'll tie the cable on properly and we'll try again. So we've got two strings, or two sets of panels here that are going to be linked on this roof. So there'll be two DC cables coming down, one positive and one negative. But rather than just stringing the single core cables down, what we thought is we'll do a junction box up here, joint those single core DC cables onto an armoured, and then we'll run that armoured down the wall so it's just nice and neat, one cable. That'll go straight into the DC isolator. So where that armoured comes up, we'll probably put a junction box on that board there potentially, and then the DC cables will come into there, joint onto that, and then it's all really nice and neat, and it gives us somewhere to work back to with the DC cables without having to fish them all the way down to the consumer unit. Take two. I'm going to try something slightly different. I'm going to actually strip this back to the inner cores. It's pretty tight, but I mean that is solid. I mean, that is not going anywhere now. So I'm confident that that will stay on. This is where you really need an apprentice or something. Oh no. Oh no. There's an extra piece of wood here. Oh. Oh yes. Oh yes. Yes! Victory! So that will go down. Then we'll land it into there. We'll run this, which is our DC cable, from here, pop through the roof under the panels and connect onto our panels. So we'll have one coming in from this side, one coming in from that side coming over. And then at the end we'll link in between the two sides. I'm glad that's up. So Super Rod did save the day once again. This is going to be our tool of the day. Link in the description if you want to get yourself a set of these. To be honest, if you're an electrician, you don't have these, I think you will find that they change your life. They really do change your life for the better. So that was a day in the life of a solar PV installer. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, make sure you like and subscribe and turn the notification bell on, because we're going to be back here putting the panels on in the next few days and filming the next episode showing you the next steps. So I hope you'll join us for the ride. And in between, why not grab a cup of tea and watch another video that pops up after this, because we've got a whole plethora of videos for you to watch about this kind of thing. But either way, thanks for watching and have a great day. That is good coffee, and I like the fact that the mug has butterflies on it. I am a fan of butterflies.